we address Sean's comment? Is that
Let's address Sean's question because I think let's combine it with my segment of the day. All right,
okay?
I want to just do some potential trade discussions.
Okay.
Okay, and just kind of go back and forth with the two of us. Talk about like who would benefit the most, which teams make the most sense. Because I do think there's actually we're going to see a couple big moves this season. I don't think that's crazy news, but we're going to see it. But yeah, let's. I'll let you read Sean's question, and it'll be a good jumping in point for that.
Okay. So if you guys feel like talking about small clubs, which we never do, is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the MVP? Is he in the MVP conversation, or is he a product of a bad team? That's a tough one.
Nope,
You don't think
not in
so?
my opinion. I don't think it's a tough decision for me personally. But you know how I feel about SGA, so I'll let you go first.
Here's the thing that I will say, because I also have here the Kia MVP ladder right now of kind of
Mm-hmm.
players currently. So number one right now is Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're the number one team in the NBA right now. I think that we have no qualms saying that Giannis at this current point is in the MVP conversation. The
100%. He's the best player in the league.
second guy is Luka Doncic, who is rivalry. I can't talk today. He's a rival of
There we go.
he's a rival. Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks, obviously in the number two category. I think that he's playing like one of the best players in the world right now, close to that
Yeah,
triple double. 33 points, 8.3 rebounds, 7.9 assists. I mean, he is balling out at a level right now, and it's kind of the reason why the Dallas Mavericks are where they're at right now. Because without him, I think they're probably one of the worst teams in the
it's the
NBA.
only reason. Yeah.
Uh, and I think that Luca at some point will cool off just because it's 30-point game after 30-point game. At some point it's gonna have to end.
I
Um,
mean, it did end. It did end
yeah,
yesterday.
yeah, and meaning more so that like the hot streak, like there's gonna be games where like Luca's just cold, and they lost to the Wizards obviously the other night. But again, I think Luca is probably obviously in the conversation. The next guy they have here at number three is Jason Tatum, guy averaging 31, 6, and 4. You know how I feel about Tatum. I think he's one of the best players in the world. He was kind of my dark horse this year to win the MVP. Playing way better defense than he has been his last couple years. I credit that to kind of Ime Udoka, even though he's not on the team anymore. But kind of
Oh yeah.
crediting him to kind of firing up on defense and getting him to like really commit to that next level. And really, I think the playmaking, I think, is what Missoula is really going to focus on for Tatum. Is how can I be a better playmaker for my guys and not just hog the ball the whole time? So, obviously, I think that he's in the conversation. This one also has Donovan Mitchell as an
Yeah.
MVP
No, he
candidate.
honestly, Mitchell should be in the top five. To me, it's not. If you got to watch the Cavs with Mitchell
Yeah,
playing. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
he is,
he's balling out for them.
and he's playing defense too, which
Yeah.
is nasty.
And then obviously number 5 they have John Morant. With the
See, maybe this is controversial. I honestly, currently, I'd put Shea above John Morant personally.
And then here's who they have as their next 5. They have Booker, Jokic, Durant, Lillard, Curry. And then as kind of guys that they added as 5 more, Jaylen Brown, Paul George, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Pascal, and Trae Young.
Way too low. Way too low.
Um,
Um,
Go ahead,
yeah,
Pete.
you go. I was just gonna say. I think the Ja one is a little nuts. Like to put him that high. I think he's been incredible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to throw too much shade.
Uh-huh.
I just think like you're taking a lot away from how good Desmond Bain has been for that team. Desmond Bain has outscored John Morant a few nights. I know it's not all about scoring, but Desmond Bain's a better defender too. Like,
Yeah.
what are we even talking about at that point? Is it all Ja that's doing it for Memphis, or are we just talking about highlights with that team? Because that's what it seems like when we're putting him at top 5 right now. He's incredibly good, but he is certainly like, God, man, this is like what I hate talking about the MVP because I think it gets so lost, like what it even is.
Yeah.
And that's why, like the Jokic ones, people threw so much shade at Jokic winning. But if you look at what that award is, he was the definition of the award. Like, you are the most valuable asset by a wide margin to your team's successes
Uh-huh.
and just in general the day in and day out goings of your team. Ja is, I mean, look at how his team performed last season without him on the court. They were incredible. That's, to me, it would be, you'd be hard pressed to say he's the MVP if his team is going 21-5 without him. Same thing could be said about um, like guys like I'm not even going to come up with another guy. I don't want to throw shade at anybody. I'm not trying to throw shade at Ja, but I do think if you look at Shai SGA, he's doing everything for that team. And the reason why I feel so strongly about Shai, I have tons of dudes that I could name you 5 guys in the league right now that I think are good stats, bad team guys. And historically, we've seen
Uh-huh.
some, tons of good stats, bad teams that fool people all the time. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is not that. It's not the same thing. And another good comparison, Bernie, and I was going to ask you, like, how soon do you think it is that we start hearing more and more people talk about, Luka is the same thing as Russ and OKC, putting up triple doubles. It's not the same thing, but there's tons of people who just look at the purely the stat line and see it and say, oh, that's the same thing. He's on a bad team, doing everything he can to, fill that stat sheet. That's what Shai is doing, man.
Yeah.
And the dude's scoring 30 points, playing his butt off on defense, and he always does. He
Yeah.
play makes for others as often as he can, and he's super efficient. The problem with his team is that there's nobody good. There's a couple good guys like Jalen Williams and Giddy and these other guys, but they're all young. I mean, he's so. Ernie, I'm going to say your favorite thing that I say. It's an incredible conflict within the timeline of the OKC Thunder. It is an incredible conflict. He is so much better at this point in his career than the other dudes on that team are. It's not fair to him, man. And I have been petitioning, and I know you and Brad are so sick of it, and I refuse to stop now because I sent you that article last night if you want to pull it up on it was on Hoops Hype. It was, you know, there's some speculation that SGA is getting upset with his team being bad. I told you it's gonna happen. He's too good. You look at guys like DeJounte Murray get traded to, Atlanta. You could get a similar return, if not more, for SGA. I actually think that the Thunder would get more for SGA than the Spurs got for DeJounte. I mean, you got to look at that and say, man, I could go somewhere and really be on a team this year. I'm that good. I feel it. And I hope so, man, because I do think he's a legit MVP contender. I don't think he's with this team, he can't win because they're going to be so bad. You can't win the MVP and have an under 500 record. That's not okay, in my opinion, unless it's just some freakish aberration. And this is close, but it's not that much of a freakish aberration. You gotta send this guy somewhere where it makes more sense for him in his career. He's not even going to get to play with Chet until next season.
Yeah.
And you don't even know what Chet is. You still have no clue if it's even going to work. So then you're guessing for another season, speculating maybe it'll get better when Chet's here. Who knows who we get in the draft? But with SGA, you're limiting your losses anyway. Like he wins you games that you shouldn't win just by him being out there, which me is the definition of a good stats, good team guy. Like usually guys who score good stats but are on bad teams for their whole careers, they don't win games. They just score good or score effectively in poor performances as a team, right? So,
Yeah.
I love Shai, man. At this point, and I told you and Brad this the other night too. I want him on the Knicks more than any other player in the NBA right now, but I just want to see him go somewhere else. I just want to see him go anywhere else. Just somewhere that can really put him in a position to compete and succeed, for a while. And I don't know what team that is, Bernie. Do you have any teams that you would like to see him on or think that if they added him, it would be a huge difference maker?
I mean, if he could go to the Orlando Magic, I think that'd be a very interesting team. I think being able to go with Paulo, go with all those bigs, kind of replace Sean, I'm sorry to say it, but kind of replace Jalen Suggs as the point guard for that
Yeah.
team.
And Suggs back.
Kind of have Suggs as the backup point guard. I think that'd be a great team. I just think that even though Miami Heat, like putting Shai on the Heat as well, could be a good team. Team up with Jimmy Butler. Uh, it's tough, man. It's tough because I agree in a sense where I think if Shai Gilgeous kind of expresses his frustration, then if I'm the Thunder organization, I'm looking to immediately get better the next year. Because I think he's a tremendous talent, And I just think really what it boils down to me is like thinking back to that trade that uh sent Paul George for Shea Gilgis essentially. And I honestly would have just kept Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and kind of kept the
Oh,
team the way
ooh,
that it was, and bringing Kawhi during the free agency period, and I think that would have been so much better than getting rid of Shea Gilgeous. Because I think Shea Gilgeous, like you said, is a great player. He's a tremendous player, and he really is something that even the Lakers need at this point, like a scoring guard that can do a lot of great things. Um,
best player on their team. I love LeBron. Right now, he's the best player on their team.
Yeah, he would be the best player in their team, and so that's kind of where I'm at right now when it comes to the Shea Gilgis thing. Is that I don't know if I necessarily think that he's an MVP candidate in terms of like top 5, but he's definitely in the top 10. Like he's balling out. He's doing a lot of great things for the Oklahoma City Thunder, even if they're 4-7. It's not the worst record in the world if we look at it. There's a lot of other teams that are worse than them, obviously the Lakers
Sure.
included.
Yeah,
Sacramento Kings in that sense, also Orlando Magic, even though they're competitive, or even the Charlotte Hornets. Like they are a decent team, but at the same time, I think what it's going to boil down to for Shea Gilgis is, and I know you hate me saying it, but like sticking with the Thunder and building this team around him and Chet when he's healthy. You have Jalen Williams. You have a bunch of guys on this Thunder team that I think if you give them another year or two, they're going to be just like the Orlando Magic in a couple years where they're competitive. Maybe they're losing, but they're competitive. And I think that's all that really matters for these guys is at this point just to be competitive even when they lose.
sure. No, I mean, I agree with you. I always have to just say, how many times can we say another year for Sam Presti? I'm sorry. I'll be the one guy on the mountaintop, disagreeing that he's the God's gift to general managers in the NBA. I think he's done a great job in certain aspects, but man, there is not a human being on earth that gets more leeway for putting out bad product than this dude does. There is not a human being in any job that gets more leeway than Sam Presti does, or more positive feedback for not necessarily uh, um, tangible results, I guess is what I'm saying. Like it always is like speculative. Hey, he's doing so great in theory. We'll
Yeah.
see it eventually. God, man, you got to see it at some point. Like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is almost an accident how well it's worked out for them. Because
Yeah.
they were going for first round picks in that trade. They got 4 firsts. I think it was Shea and Danilo Gallinari, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, man. It worked out great because you ended up with Shea and all those first, but still, like it hasn't turned into anything yet. And I, on paper, Bernie, I couldn't really disagree with you because I'm a huge Giddy person. I think he's an incredible long term point guard in the NBA. I think he's just going to get better and better as like a pure. He's like one of the best young, like traditional looking point guards I've seen in a long time. Like he does a lot of the things that like you just want a guy who handles the ball to do well.
Yeah.
Well, he's got it. Which that's perfect next to Shea because Shea can do that and he can play, mostly play the two. Like put him out there and just let him shoot.
Yeah.
I just want to see it not get wasted for so long, man. Like that's my
I know.
biggest thing. It's the
I
biggest
know.
thing for me.
I know. And
And
that's the frustration. I get it, man. It sucks.
because I think let me give you 2 teams that I would love to see him on.
Yeah. What
All right,
teams?
and I think that it would legitimately change their fortunes as teams if he went here. I'll give you my second one, and then I'll give you
Ooh.
my number one candidate first.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Dallas. I think if you got him
Dallas.
next
Yeah.
to Luca, he's a perfect fit with Luca. He plays defense super hard. He's big. They're unguardable. If you have both of them on the court, what do you even do as a defense? It's impossible as far as I'm concerned because they can play make for each other. They can both shoot the lights out. That's one of the best pairings I think you could find in the NBA. And it's kind of like it would be Dallas's counter to what Atlanta did with Trey. Let's go get DeJounte for Trey, which is a perfect fit, and we've seen it, really work out for Atlanta. Hey,
Yeah.
we traded Trey for Luca. Let's go get the perfect fit for Luca and put, SGA next to him. Plus, they need any scoring they can get in Dallas. The problem with them, they just don't have enough to go get him. So I don't think that's going to happen, but I would like to see it. Number one, Bernie, number
Yeah.
one, and this would be a little bit of a hamper in terms of seeing SGA as like truly as good as he is,
Uh-huh.
but send him to New Orleans.
New
New
Orleans.
Orleans,
Okay.
New Orleans has all the pieces to make a move for a really good young player. And imagine SGA in that offense running the point with CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Jonas Valanciunas. That is the best team in the NBA by a little bit of a margin, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I think that's pretty tough to beat. And
Yeah.
defensively, they're super long. Minus CJ, they can do all sorts of switching and just be all over the place. I think that would be nasty. The only other team I thought, and I haven't even heard this as like a rumor anywhere. Not that I heard Dallas or New Orleans, but I mean, what about your Celtics, Bernie? What about your Celtics? Marcus Smart hasn't looked like Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Smart this season. And I'm not trying to go back because I rode really hard for Marcus Smart last season. He changed my opinion on him dramatically. I love Marcus Smart at this point, but you still have Tatum and you still have Brown and you
Yeah.
still have the core to go get a championship. What about, I mean, people might say this is me just feeding back into the super team thing, but they don't have the vibe of a super team. Even if you went and got SGA, they just would have the talent of a super team. And I think that would, I think the Celtics have a little bit of room for concern with the Cavaliers joining this Eastern Conference race. I think that they're it's not as simple of a run for them making it back to the finals. So I think they should consider going to get something else too. So another big defender, somebody who can score too if Tatum isn't making shots or Brown is off. I think that would be
Yeah.
really nice. Obviously, the Knicks are my number one, but we don't
Yeah.
need to talk about that. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
man. I think SGA is Sean. To answer your question again, I think SGA is that guy. I think he is super good. I wouldn't put him top five either, Bernie. I agree with you. He's not top five MVP
Yeah.
candidate, but
He's definitely in the
he's one of
top
the best
10.
players.
I think that, he'll get some recognition. I think, like you said, at some point it's going to have to be time to like really think about, okay, what are the Thunder? What are they trying to do? Because again, like you said, Shea Gilgeous is 26 years old right now. And, as much as he is part of a timeline with those guys, he could also not be, right? In terms
Mhm.
of like the age, like he's like at the cusp of like, okay, now is the time to start building around this team. Now is the time to like get the team going so you can finally like see what you have with all those draft picks that you got. And so we'll see what happens, man. It's gonna be a
Let
very
me ask you
interesting one.
this, Bernie.
All right.
Let's say New Orleans puts that Lakers pick and one dude up for Shea. Who says no first?
Uh
'Cause you could add a little bit more too, but I think that Lakers pick is like the most valuable pick in the NBA right now.
as of
One of
right
them.
now, probably just because you have a
LeBron's not even playing. They're going to be terrible. I mean, they're going to be terrible for most of the season. So it's a pretty safe bet that it's going to be a good pick.
yeah. I don't know. It's tough.
Because I think it's a fair question, Bernie. Like with OKC, and we're not going back into it too deep. I just think like they could really, if there's any season for them to tank, it's this season. So I just question like when is Presti going to like really think about that? We could go get all the assets we need to truly have locked, loaded, sealed deal. Wembenyama, we're right in there. They
Yeah.
could go get that guy and have their next Kevin Durant. So I don't know. Let's talk about a few more trades, Bernie, real quick. All right.
Okay.